Hello everyone, great to see you here. I'm Esther de las Casas, Communications at Mentabacus. Dan and I have just returned from our trip through Europe. 7 cities, countless impressions, and quite a few UNESCO World Heritage sites along the way. It was inspiring, sometimes overwhelming, and always enriching. Right now, Dan is back in the garden. The grapes are almost ripe, and he swears they'll taste better if he keeps an eye on them himself. So today I'm stepping in for him. This episode ties together the theme of scripts we've been exploring, the ways stories shape us, guide us, sometimes even mislead us, with a light echo of the aim high young astronauts thought from earlier episodes. Today's story is set in Weimar, a city where scripts of every kind seem to meet and clash. A place where ideas, art, politics, and even horrors all left their mark. This episode is called Weimar, City of Scripts. Weimar looks modest. A provincial German town small enough to cross in half an hour, yet it contains more scripts than some much bigger cities. Walk a few streets and you bump into Goethe's garden house. At first sight, it seems almost too simple. A small home, some tools, and a patch of green. Goethe didn't just relax in that garden, he recreated the landscape itself. He terraced hillsides, planted fruit trees, vines, and flowers, and ran botanical experiments. He observed rare specimens, took cuttings, studied their transformations. His garden was both theater and laboratory, a living manuscript of nature's scripts. And Goethe knew, to name is to create. Whoever gives things names also writes the world. His garden was not just a retreat. It was a stage. Not far away, Schiller enters the story. If Goethe scripted the soul, Schiller scripted freedom. His plays gave Germans their vocabulary for dignity and resistance, for the clash between power and conscience. Together, Goethe and Schiller shaped not only literature, but the cultural imagination of a whole nation. They still stand today, cast in bronze in front of the theater, gazing outward as if expecting us to continue their conversation. They are Weimar's first script, the script of genius of ideals cultivated like a garden. But Weimar is never just one script. The next chapter opens in 1919. The Weimar Republic is declared. Suddenly, this small town becomes the seat of German democracy. The script changes: jazz, cabaret, women's rights, debates that spilled from parliament onto the streets. It was fresh, exciting, and also fragile. The Weimar Republic became a testing ground, a rehearsal for democracy. A rehearsal that collapsed when pressure grew too strong, and the old scripts of fear and extremism returned. Weimar, the city of freedom, also became the name of a failure with catastrophic consequences. Yet in the same period, another script grew just a short walk away. The Bauhaus. Imagine the contrast. While politicians argued, Gropius and his students were drawing lines, experimenting with shapes, breaking old forms. They wanted clarity, simplicity, a functional beauty that could remake everyday life. In Weimar, colors moved from Goethe's garden paths to the geometric walls of the Bauhaus. Where Schiller wrote plays of freedom, the Bauhaus tried to design freedom into chairs, lamps, and buildings. It was not just an art school. It was kind of a blueprint for how life itself could be designed. And then there is the darkest script. Only a few kilometers from Weimar's gardens and theaters on the Ettersberg Hill stood Buchenwald. A concentration camp, a place of systematic cruelty, of human lives reduced to numbers and ash. Here, the memorial, seen from inside a workshop of the Bauhaus University. The contradiction could not be sharper. The Bauhaus and Goethe's garden on one side, Buchenwald's barbed wire on the other. Weimar holds both scripts together, genius and horror, ideals and their collapse. It forces us to see that culture does not inoculate us against barbarism. Sometimes the garden and the camp grow closer than we want to admit. Out from darkness, silence, and speechlessness, something else rises. Fragile at first, like a note held in the air. Then stronger, unfolding into harmony. Weimar sings. Liszt lived here, gathering Europe's musical elite. Bach spent nearly a decade in Weimar, leaving behind a script of sound and structure. Music is another script the city carries, tones that build invisible cathedrals, harmonies that suggest a moral order without ever naming it. In a way, music is Weimar's purest script. No words, no ideology, only patterns that demand interpretation. So here it is, a city of scripts. Political scripts, artistic scripts, musical scripts, and ideological scripts. Some scripts liberating, others destructive. Some still inspire, others still warn. Weimar is not one story, but the clash of stories. You can stand in Goethe's garden, where language shaped a living landscape of meaning. You can sit in the Bauhaus, where lines and colors were rearranged to invent a new modern life. You can walk the grounds of Buchenwald, where the worst human script ever written unfolded. And you realize, scripts are not innocent. They build worlds. And sometimes, they destroy them. The garden theme returns again and again in Weimar. Goethe's garden house, the landscape parks, the careful architecture of gardens meant for reflection and pleasure. But Weimar's gardens are not only about beauty. They are about cultivation, of ideas, of ideologies, of identities. A garden always has a gardener, someone who decides what grows and what is weeded out. In that sense, the city is one big metaphor for the scripts that structure our lives. We are always planting something. The question is, what? Perhaps that is the bigger picture Weimar gives us. It teaches us that scripts are not just texts or theories. They are lived, embodied, built into our houses, our laws, our gardens, and sometimes tragically even into the darkest architecture of history. They can elevate or they can annihilate. They can free or they can enslave. But they always shape. The task is not to escape scripts, but to choose carefully which ones we let grow. Weimar is my city of scripts because here you can see them all, the hopeful and the broken, the cultivated and the brutal. And walking through its streets, you feel both wonder and unease. Wonder at the brilliance of Goethe, Schiller, Liszt, and the Bauhaus. And the chilling knowledge that even here, barbarism was only a few steps away. Perhaps that is why I think of Weimar as a garden city. Not because of its flowers or parks, but because it embodies the gardener's dilemma. To plant is always to decide. To let something grow means not letting something else grow. Every culture, every society, every individual is constantly gardening scripts. And the results depend on what we choose to cultivate. Weimar shows us that scripts are fragile. They can be trampled, corrupted, rewritten. But they also have resilience. Goethe still speaks. Bach still plays. Bauhaus still inspires. And even the failure of the Weimar Republic still teaches. In this sense, the city is a script archive, a place where we can read humanity's contradictions in full color. The Garden of Weimar is not paradise, but it is real. And maybe that is more useful. It shows us how easily we drift and how important it is to keep gardening carefully. It reminds us that culture is never finished. Like a garden, it demands constant work. And it hints at something that connects all these bigger pictures. Whether we stand in a garden in Weimar or look up to the stars as young or not so young astronauts, the question is the same. Which scripts will we carry forward? Which ones do we dare to cultivate? And that was today's bigger picture. Weimar showed us how scripts can inspire brilliance and how they can lead into darkness. Maybe the lesson is simple. We can't choose whether scripts exist, but we can choose which ones we follow. Dan will be back next time, or so he promises, hopefully with grapes harvested and no script about garden pests to complain about. Until then, take care and keep an eye on the bigger picture. And last but not least, remember, as Dan always says, learning isn't a trend. Structure still works. Square, not hip. Visit us at mentabacus.com.
Every story needs structure. Every mind needs a map. Mentabacus. Square, not hip.